Hello everyone. Sat Sri Akal everyone. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. How are you all?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
I was getting worried that I wasn't being let in, that have I got the right date and time?
Yeah. It's just 2 o'clock. Just 2 o'clock here in London. Is that Manpreet? Manpreet, I can't see you. Your video is not on at the moment.
Let me, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Wonderful. It's a full house. Excellent. So, yeah, so welcome everyone. Welcome. I'm just so excited to be with all of you in one place. I know I've had some brilliant conversations with all of you one-to-one, but this is a conversation where I'm not sure if you know any of the others on the panel or if you've ever met each other before, but you all know me. My name is Jasveer. So let me just start by asking you to introduce yourselves. I'm based in Birmingham. Kamaljeet, if you could just tell us, I know where you're located, but if you could tell everyone else where you're located and your area of work, just as an
Yeah, sure, thank you. So I'm Kamaljeet, I'm based in Leicester, originally from Luton, and I work for a financial institution, so I work for NatWest Bank in financial crime.
Okay, and Rajnarind?
Yeah, hi, Vaji Khasa, Vaji Fatehji. I am based in New Jersey in the United States. I work on Wall Street, I work in investment banks, but I'm very active within the Sikh community and the nonprofit world here in America. So I have a lot of hats and looking forward to speaking with all of you.
Okay, great. And Arvinder Singh Paul?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm Arvinder. I live in London, and is there anybody here that doesn't mind if I speak a few words in Punjabi sometimes? Because I actually speak Panglish, which is Punjabi and English together.
Go ahead, excellent. I'm sure we can all manage a few words in Punjabi.
Lived in London for the last 50 odd years and now retired over 10 years ago and running a small charity called Rainbow Schools.
Okay, great, thank you. And Ranjit Singh?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So it's Ranjit Singh from Derby in the East Midlands in the UK. I wear all sorts of hats, or the stars, I say different, the stars are different colours. One of my things in the Sikhi world is I'm Assistant Secretary of the local Gurdwara and also helping out with what you might have heard recently, Supreme Sikh Council, or as it used to be called, Sikh Council. So very heavily involved with national Sikh matters in the UK. My background is in construction, and a couple of years I decided to go my own route, and so after working 30 years in corporate life, I'm now self-employed in construction. But Sikhi is at the core of what I do and everything I do.
Okay, thank you. And Taran Singh?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name's Taran Singh from Birmingham in England, and I worked in the architectural engineering industry as a 3D designer for many years, and just 2 years ago I started my own business, and we also provide training and 3D printing services in 3D design and VR and AR and mixed reality.
Okay, great. And Manmeet Singh.
Hi, Sat Sri Akal everyone. So this is Manmeet I'm I think the furthest from all of you. I'm in the Asian region. I'm in Malaysia. So so I was in the IT industry for 18 years, and now I started my own business for the past 2.5 years doing coaching and training. And yeah, I do follow a lot of values in the Sikhism side as well.
Okay, thank you, Manmeet. And Surinder Singh Ji.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I am Surinder Singh, and basically I do a lot of things. At the moment, I was leading on the COVID-19 Sikh community messaging project with Nishkam. I've just finished working on the census, so I've been doing some work. I was area manager for Inner West Midlands for the census, and I'm also doing some cricket stuff with Rajasthan Royals, which is one of the IPL franchises. So I'm like the UK ambassador for Rajasthan Royals, and yeah, and do a lot of stuff around Sikh leadership and trying to get people into politics from Sikh backgrounds and stuff. So I've been doing a lot of that engagement and participation work with Gurdwara and individuals within the community.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And in my individual conversations with all of you, I've made it very clear that the purpose of the project is primarily about learning, because Sikhi teaches, you know, the word Sikh means to learn, and through learning we develop our skills, we learn about our own culture. And the second thing is about leadership. It's about values-based leadership. How do we use the stories, the symbols, the principles, the ethics that we have, you know, even if we haven't consciously made an effort to explore those, they have nevertheless informed our behavior in some way. And the third thing is about culture. This project is based on the Sikhi principles of Seva and Band Ke Shakna. So we're all, you know, we've come together to collaborate on this project with the intention that we will generate some good. You know, the intention is to strengthen our culture, strengthen the social cultural capital, so that we can enable others, ourselves as well, to become better leaders. And so let me just start by asking, I know like there isn't a facility here to raise hands, so I will just go according to my screen. And could I ask Kamaljeet, first of all, to start off by just, you know, we've had a conversation together, Kamaljeet, where I've asked you about the impact of stories. So could you tell us a little bit more about how the Sikhi stories have expressed themselves in the way you behave in the workplace as a professional?
Yeah, sure, thank you. I think if I reflect back and think about probably my childhood and sitting down with my dad and going to the Gurdwara every Sunday, it's the stories of our rich heritage and our ancestors and Sikhi that I guess have really, I guess within our DNA really, and those are the things where we try to, I guess, live by some of those values in our day-to-day world. If I think about specific stories that stand out, to me, I think when we talked last time, we talked about, you know, the Miri Piri concept, and the Sikh Guru Har Gobind Singh Ji, and, you know, talking about that political and that spiritual reference. And I think for us, when we talked about that, I was talking really around, I think for us as a Sikh population, we're quite good at the spiritual elements of it, but maybe not so much around the political elements of it. We don't see Sikhs necessarily in those kind of positions, and I think it's that's what I'm striving to enable from some of the others I've talked about too. Some of those I think we're really trying to, I guess, break down those barriers and really push forward with, to give Sikhs that platform and some more of a presence on an international basis. I think those are some of the things that we talked about before, and then just ultimately Guru Nanak Dev Ji's, you know, message over 550 years ago about treating, you know, oneness and treating all humans with equality, and how prevalent is that still today, you know, centuries after, and we see so much, I guess, inequality in society across the whole world, and having the, I guess, freedom around human rights and freedom of speech and giving everyone the same opportunity. I think some of those were the pertinent ones when we talked before.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think that all of us live in the Western world. All of us on the call here today live in the Western world. And when you talk about Miri Piri, that's an important concept to highlight, I suppose, because in the Western world, politics and spirituality are very often separated, aren't they? Whereas in the Sikhi faith, we're encouraged to live in a way. So it's almost like a way of life where spirituality is not divorced from politics. Would you agree with that, Kamaljeet?
Yeah, absolutely. However, I feel that probably on an international platform, we don't see that connection between spirituality and politics, perhaps, and also some of that, I guess, spirituality on that level can, you know, I think for Sikhs as us in our day-to-day, we try to conduct ourselves with humility and compassion. And I think some of those could potentially be seen as, I think, weaknesses on a political agenda in some respects. And I think that's where we see a massive opportunity for us as a society.
Can I just butt in there for 1 second? And I say I really love this discussion about this spirituality and political engagement coming into them. I say, even if you look at it on the Gurdwara level, a very local Gurdwara level, the politics that goes in within the Gurdwara is like, it's really invisible. Yeah, you know, for somebody who's from this country, born in this country, you know, we don't kind of understand it. So it is become status driven. You know, pradhanagis and running the Gurdwara, that becomes very important. Even like the powerful kitchen within the langar has a political aspect to it. Whereas when you go into the politics, where younger people like ourselves can have the language issues, so we understand the language, we understand the society that we're living in, we can articulate ourselves, we do stand back, and that is what's costing us thriving as a community, because we have, out of all the religions, and I'm going to be biased here and say that we have that oneness, the equality strand, which we have to practice every day, and we don't have an agenda for that. However, when we enter the political thing, everything seems to change, and I think that's because the culture that we've been living in outside India and coming here, we don't really grasp that well. And so I totally understand where Benji's coming from. That is where we really need to take this leadership, the decision making, the best decision making for all the community, regardless of their faith or background. And that's where we are really, really missing a trick. And we hope projects like this will, enlighten this.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Because you see, when we talk about the langar, even the way we eat is a political statement, because sitting on the floor, eating equally with people regardless of their status, when Guru Nanak Ji introduced this concept, it was a revolutionary concept, because in the society that he was brought up in, it wasn't correct for everyone to eat together and eat using the same dishes. So even that, the very concept of langar, it's a political statement, isn't it? And a lot of people seem to, when they go to the Gurdwara, they will say, but I don't like all the politics. And it's like, well, everything about the Sikh religion is political. We're making statements in actually declaring equality. Not everyone believes in equality. They might say they do, but they actually don't. You know, if they believe in hierarchies rather than equality. But our way of life teaches us that is the fundamental principle, that we are all interconnected in that oneness.
Yes, can I make a small comment? I wasn't going to make it right now, but I think it's pertinent. Kamaji has touched on Miri Piri, and it's a very important concept in Sikhi. Having gone through the Gurdwara committees in my past and gone through doing seva in various aspects, we as a community, this is my observation, this is, I'm not making a statement, this is my observation, it's one opinion, that the Sikhs generally are not equipped to organize themselves in a political way. They don't have a historical success in organizing politically. We are still back in the 200-year-old Gurdwara Pradhan, like Surinder Singh said, the political side of Pradhan. And I think there's a disconnect between the spiritual and the political, because the idea of the gurus was to actually be spiritually aware, and to our political steps to be guided spiritually. But what happens when you go into politics in Sikh Gurdwaras, the ego takes over to such an extent that I found myself that two Sikhs cannot sit together and agree to disagree. And until we actually get that political capital and that awareness that it's okay to disagree, but walk away still shaking hands, rather than getting our kirpans out and causing such havoc in Gurdwaras and getting such bad publicity internationally and nationally, I think we are very immature politically in that sense as a society. That's just my observation.
Is that because of education? Is that, you know, what Rajnarind, what do you think about this? Do you think it's the level of education that people have, that they resort to, you know, I don't know, physical expressions of disagreement rather than intellectual?
I think it really depends on where you are, to be honest. I've been very fortunate. I'm born and raised in the States, and I think the sangats that I go to and the gurdwaras that I go to, there is those kirpan kind of fights, let's say, that happen, but it is of the older generation. I think the younger generation, we've kind of really our mentality is a little different. And again, being born and raised here, we don't have that background. We don't have that culture in that we're coming at each other. We're really looking at each other's skills and leveraging it. And I'll give the example. You know, we were talking about the langar and the equality around that. I mean, you look at the stories from our history, right? Giving the water in the fields to everyone, right? And now you look at a similar thing that's happening right now in Delhi in the farmers' protests. And a documentary is coming out. We just released the trailer. But I saw images of langar being distributed to the police office who just gave water cannons and tear gas to the protesters. And they're now being served. And they're sitting down and eating. So it's still alive today. And everybody's, in my mind, the history is there, Sikhi is still alive, and we just need to really bring it forward, whether it's the education of individuals or the mindset. And I think it's the mindset of really looking to everyone's skills, everyone's strengths, and working towards together as a community.
That's an excellent example of Miri Piri, where we have langar being served to the police officers who've just, you know, tear gassed or, you know, whatever weapons they were using in that. That is a great example of a political statement of spirituality. Does anybody else want to come in on that?
It is a wonderful example. What I would like to see is our gurdwaras being a shining example of how we put our Sikh principles in practice, in how to work together and to leverage each other's strengths. Like Naren said, I would love to see more and more of that happening. I see that happening in very few gurdwaras. About 20 years ago, Naren, I thought, okay, I was about 40 years old then, 42. I thought, okay, the next generation now is coming up. They're obviously going to be more educated. They're going to be brought up in the UK. They're going to be coming into the gurdwaras and managing these gurdwaras like they're supposed to be managed in a professional, politically active way. But I was really disappointed. 20 years have gone by and I found very few gurdwaras in the UK that are actually run transparently, run in a way which is inclusive. The vast majority are still stuck in doing Akhand Path Sahibs and weddings and functions and looking at the income that's being generated by them and doing the langar seva. No doubt about it, the whole Sikh community internationally has shone in the COVID crisis to actually feed those vulnerable people around the world. You know, that has been a wonderful, wonderful statement. And it's a moment to be proud of as a Sikh that our community has risen to the challenge and to be able to do that. But we're very good at these one-off events. We're very good at feeding the vulnerable. We're very good at that. But when it comes to organizing ourselves and to be able to listen to each other and leverage each other's strengths, I think we have a long way to go still.
Okay, thank you. And Ranjit Singh, let me bring you in now, because I know in one of the conversations we've had individually, we've spoken about why is it that we're very good at being good neighbors and distributing langar and being very generous, and yet we're not as skilled in being rulers, like the kind of archetype that Maharaja Ranjit Singh showed when he was able to bring together the Sikhs, the Hindus, the Muslims and the Christians. He was able to bring all of those different communities together. Why is it that we seem to be lacking in this rulership kind of leadership skills?
Okay, thank you, Jasveer, Benji. So Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh to everyone. My observations, you know, over a number of decades, shall we say, have been quite interesting. Just from my looking back historically in the conversations you've had, you made me think, you know, there's a token Gurbani se babaniya kahaniya put the sputakrain. So it's the stories of our ancestors and the way they're told are what make us better people. Okay, and as children, we've traditionally, in most households, the books we read, and I'm talking about Sikh education we're given, is very simple. Oh, Guru Nanak went and fed some, poor people. Like Kanhaiya a great story. Oh, he didn't treat anyone different. And they're given it in a childhood at a very superficial level. They're turned into stories of humility, but actually of Sikhs are only there to give, give, give. So we grow up into our teenage years thinking we can only give, give, give. So that Miri Piri concept, that saint soldier concept, we're great with the saint side, we're great with the spirituality side, because those stories are about spirituality and about giving, because that's what spirituality is about. You are serving mankind. But what we forget, and this is kind of a wake-up call to me maybe a couple of decades ago when somebody sat me down and says, where's your anak? Where's your spirit come from? And so what do you mean? And over a number of years, as effectively a mentor, and I questioned him, and he gave me feedback, and said, well, these are where things have come from. When you look at the whole picture, we grow up in this very soft environment, you might say. There is a different narrative, which I think one or two of us said. Over the last 30 years, post-1984 Kallukara, the people who were perhaps of the same thinking then that Sikhs should be good people and starting to get politicized, suddenly suffered a big, big shock to the whole system. They left India, they came abroad. So they've been carrying the Sikh story of the saint side, but in a very polarizing way. So they've had to, by circumstances, portray a vision of Sikhi, the sant side as we're okay with, the Sipahi side, the soldier side, as a very extreme example of that we're always fighters. And that 30-year narrative is turned us into a victim sort of mentality that whatever we do, we're going to get, going to be squashed down upon. And we're losing that ground in the middle. We've got education, but sometimes we lack wisdom. And we've got to bridge that gap. And I see those green shoots. The last 10 years I've been working with the Sikh Council side. I can see those green shoots, but they're isolated green shoots. So people do want to blend that Miri Piri concept. Yeah, they're very good with the spirituality, but the political side of it, the spy side of it, we've got to take it away from that extreme narrative and bring it back into the field. And it is about the decisions you make in between. So Sikhs traditionally, our legacy is we're great fighters, and that's the narrative we've been given, but we're terrible rulers. The more we tell ourselves we're terrible rulers, guess what? We become terrible rulers. And I think that narrative has got to change, that we have got it in ourselves to fight, but not everybody can then lead and govern afterwards. So when you win the battle, then what? And I think Maharaja Ranjit Singh, I'd say his namesake, but he managed to use politics and diplomacy to bring people together, the Sikhs of the time together, and create this one 40-year period of our history where there was unity, there was secular living, everybody felt safe. And the period after that, back to the old politics, the divide and rule politics that have been around. And I think Rainbow Schools, Arvinder Singh, is it? You made the point about the Gurdwaras. The Gurdwaras have come through the last 30 odd years with that very polarized narrative that either you're a very holy person or you're a, I use the word, you're a Khalistani. Khalistan means something else, but you're portrayed in this very extreme narrative. Whereas we've all got a bit of both in us. We're not perfect saints, but we're not perfect soldiers either. And I think we need to feed the soldier bit of us, so that, and soldier isn't just about fighting with swords. The pen is mightier than the sword. It's for a reason, because after every battle, a treaty is signed. It is written down in paper. So I think we can self-educate, and what you learn, share that learning. Don't just share the langar and the seva, the physical seva, share the mental learning. So if we've learned something, and there are a load of good books out there, that the message that the Gurus gave us, every one of them had a political undertone, whether it was the langar, whether it was the Harmandir Sahib, creating a pool of water was the other part of the Harmandir Sahib. That was a very political point about free water, not free water, but water for all. And Guruji's riding on horses, that was a political statement. When Guru Har Gobind Sahib took up the sword. So if you look back historically, these were very political messages that have now been sort of softened into purely a sant or a very saintly story. So I think we can self-educate and find out, well, what is the real deeper message behind all these stories that we've grown up with? It may awaken the in us, that spirit, that's not spirit of fighting, but that spirit to I suppose, inner strength. Your inner strength then drives you, and you can lead a principled life. We said in the Adas, man niva matuchi. And when you bring those principles, even if you don't know every principle of Sikh, if you pick up one principle in your life, and we individually drive through that, then the collective, when you meet in a Sangat like this, those individual gun will come together and form, you know, a holy place, but with that driving force of you might say, the Sipai in us. So I'll stop there and
yeah, no, that's great.
chip in there.
No, you've articulated that really well. I just wanted to draw attention to Bhagat Singh at this point, because quite a few of you mentioned Bhagat Singh as one of the stories that we hear in our childhood. And 100 years ago, I think roughly about 100 years ago, Bhagat Singh was much more popular than Gandhi was as a freedom fighter. In the fight for independence, there was a time when he was not only famous in the Punjab, he was famous all over India, because he wasn't fighting for independence only for the Sikhs, he was fighting for independence for the Indians. And so I suppose in that sense, he brought people together in the same way that Maharaja Ranjit Singh brought people together. But he was only 23 years old when he was hanged. You know, he was just like a recent graduate, I suppose, really. But for that age, for 23, you know, a 23-year-old person, I've read his book, Why I'm an Atheist, and I didn't know that he was an atheist, but his atheism was, I think, you know, it seemed, from the little that I know, it seemed to be about bringing people together in a common ideology of equality, rather than simply focusing on our local community. What do the rest of you think?
I can just add to that on narrative. I just said, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Bhagat Singh was a galvanizing force. As they say, history is written by those who, you know, win effectively. So the post 1930, 1947 history is perhaps written by those who then assumed power. And I think the history behind Bhagat Singh has been forgotten. It's been deliberately made to be forgotten. Those of us who keep it alive, you know, God willing, we can keep it alive. But those sacrifices are in the principles of what they used to call it, the Khalsa, when they used to get together in the 18th century, twice a year to get together, pass something, then just go away and do it. And Bhagat Singh acted in that vein, that he knew what was wrong and he just went and tried to correct it and, you know, fought that battle. So absolutely, I think, you know, we owe it to ourselves to, not just because he was a Sikh of birth, you say he was an atheist. There is something that, what is beyond Sikhi? If I said we're all Sikhs, but what's beyond Sikhi? And it is probably atheism in many ways. I say that tongue in cheek because if you take Sikhi and you take Christianity, take various faiths, and you pull out that strand, that common strand between them all, that's humanity. Okay. And that's where, we serve 6 million langars every day, goes out the window, because that becomes a very small physical thing that we do, but spirituality and the spirit rises above that. So maybe he was an atheist because he realized that actually he had to step out of religion and faith. He may be a man of faith, but he stepped out of a religious garb so that he could appeal to everyone. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, from the little that I know, I know that because I've read Why I'm an Atheist, I know he was influenced by Marxism, he was influenced by socialist ideology, and I suppose he was drawn to the equality, that, you know, that's what he was driven by, that everyone should be treated equally. And so that's what he was fighting for, and he was willing to fight for that without any compensation, without any reward. I think in that book he said that he's not looking for a reward for his altruism, I suppose, you know, like the reward was simply the fact that he wanted people to have justice.
Okay, just if I just come into that point, it's very interesting when you look at that, you know, his aura and what he's achieved, and if you put that in the modern day, when a Sikh candidate goes for election or office, the people that talk most about him are fellow Sikhs. So we do have that concept of, if somebody does step up the people that pull him down first are from our own background. And that happens time and time and again. And I've seen it in action as well. And again, those that get through the hoops of politics, they've got through not off their own back, but of people that have got them there. So again, the word politics has become blighted. And then when it, for the younger generation, like we've done a lot of things on the basics of politics, being able to talk in public, being able to, think freely without political affiliation. And that lot of that has now taken over. We've lost the message of what leadership is, or what it means to be in office. We have been, you are in office for a reason, and the reason are you're going to serve somebody's agenda. So I think that's where we probably haven't got it. When Bhagat Singh did his message, there was one agenda. The agenda was for equality, and he did it not for himself, but he did it for the whole of India. So we've really got that. We look at the things that happen now. We look at the farmers dispute that's happening in India. And again, there's two sides. There's the old farmers side, and there's the new young social media savvy youngsters who are on the social media. And when they try to come together, there is always going to be that clash. So we are our worst enemies when it comes to entering the political field. And unless we change that, our system and what we want to achieve will never be achieved. If we just put that back with a community that is quite close to ours, which is the Pakistani Muslim community. I live in two areas, and we're 72 councillors. They've got 25, 26. And they represent all the community. There's older ones, there's younger ones, in the middle-aged ones. So they have that. But whereas you look at the Sikh community, they're all either old or they're not articulate. They can't speak English, and they've just got into their positions because who they know, it's not what they know. And that's where we really fail, because when it comes to stuff like the census, like we've got this census debate, what is your ethnicity? Everybody's jumping on it. It should be Sikh, it should be Sikh. That is good. And I say I'm working for the census, so I'm saying it's a good thing that we are doing it. However, when it comes to getting those data in, and how are we going to manage it? Because we haven't got the political clout to sit there. So, by the way, Sikhs need X, Y, and Z. We're not looking at who actually makes the decisions. We're just thinking, this is the information that we have out there. So it's very, very difficult. And unless we do start thinking more politically, more what we can do for the community rather than which badge we wear on our shirt, nothing will change. And again, we look at our youngsters out there. Are they educated by Bhagat Singh? Are they educated about what happened in 1984? And we don't have the time. We just don't have the time to sit down with them, say, this is why people are doing. Why is the farming dispute so important for us? I said, well, I'm never going to go to India. I've never been on a farm. I'm not going to go on a farm. And then you lose that. And then you get some people are really jumping up and down on the social media saying, we want to do this. And you ask them a simple question. When do they cut the crops? They won't have a clue. So it's really difficult. And then these messages then become labelized or politicized. Or you follow the farmers dispute, you're an Atavadi. So it's really, really difficult. And we need a new narrative. A leadership should be a skill designed and installed in every Sikh child. And then that might change the whole perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Let me add towards I think coming from this side of the world, and rather than that, so from my end, we had in Malaysia one of our famous opposition party, or who was in the parliament, who was the opposition for very long until he was the lawyer Kirpal Singh. And the thing is that he fought for equality. He fought for a lot of things in terms of the political side of Sikhism and all that. But sadly, he passed away. And his son, who is Gobind, was also a strong lawyer. And from what we know and what I have heard is that, I know Ranjit has mentioned that, Bhagat Singh and also yourself has mentioned that, but we forget one person who may not have had so much of history, but if you know about her, you probably think about it, that there was a political equality at her time as well. And she was Mata Saad Devaji. So she was after Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and during when everything moved to Delhi, she sat on the Takkat. She sat on the Takkat as a leader, as a ruler, and she could even control the Mughal, at that time after Aurangzeb was Bahadur Shah, and which what happened is that she had delegated and she had given responsibility to everybody who is going to be the next head granthi, who's going to be that. She was able to delegate, and she also raised, I think many people will know, Jassa Singh Ahluwalia, who became a great ruler later. But all the values that she brought in was all equality. And you are right to say political, it takes a lot of people to, it's the ego that has come in. It's a lot of ego. And it's a lot of, what I would say is that differentiate of being in power. So here we have a lot of people who want to be in power, who think the handling things in the Gurdwara is, if you have become a pradhan in the Gurdwara, it means you have the most power. But there are certain part of the people here which is also divided, where they believe that things should be done equally. And in Malaysia and Singapore, or I can even say for Thailand as well, is that what happens is that when you become a pradhan of the Gurdwara, it tends to show that what you have with you have so much of money to throw on it, because it's a lot of political inside there. So it's in three of these countries, if we talk about it, it's similar to that. And what I'm trying to say here is that I agree that there's a lot of politics, but there are a lot of people who are in politics, who are Punjabis, who are Sikhs, who are doing the right thing as well.
And I just say, that Manmeet, you've touched on a very important point there. We as individual Sikhs, when we enter a structure within another political party, then we can excel because we actually fit in that structure. What I would really be interested in is the Sikhs themselves setting up a structure in which individuals can be, the qualities of each individual can be leveraged from a Gurdwara base point. You know, that would be our starting point, that each Gurdwara is organized in such a way that I'd love to come visit your local Gurdwara in New Jersey one day and see how you've actually organized people, young people there, to be able to work together. So when it comes to election, because I mean, the dilemma and the dichotomy in Sikhi is that we want to do decision making or the election, not the word elect, but the selection of a committee by not by having votes, but by having a what's the word I'm looking for?
Selection
panel. Yeah.
Have a selection panel, but sarbat di jime sarbat khalsa bula janda si pehle. You know, in Harmandir Sahib, you'd call a sarbat khalsa to make the big decisions. So you call the sangat in the Gurdwara, say, right, which people would you like to choose to run this Gurdwara? But what's happened is we've adopted the election model in most Gurdwaras. So you get 2 or 3 groups who become mini parties within that Gurdwara congregation, and they fight literally. They will throw money, like Manmeet saying, they'll have leaflets, they'll have people who will canvass other people, and the whole political system has become more westernized, like the Western parties would. I mean, I hate to see the way the latest US election was run. I mean, it was horrific, the amount of money that USA spends on their electioneering. I'm glad the UK don't spend that much, but we need to have a structure in place in which we can go in and fit in, and then that structure, that system itself works really well. So democracy is one system. There is no perfect system. I mean, you've got proportional representation, you've got first past the post systems. There's no real one system that's perfect. But in Sikhi, in Gurdwaras, if we can get away from having the old structure of a pradhan and 21 committee members, and then who then are in conflict with the other party, and they wait for their year or 2 years before the other party can get in, and they just point score with each other and start building bigger and bigger Gurdwaras as a show to say, this committee has done this, now he's built a bigger Gurdwara. I mean, building a bigger Gurdwara is like, you know, having a white elephant. Is the Sangat there? Are there nurseries in every Gurdwara? Is there a crash facility so that young mothers can actually go to work? Are there youth activities other than just having Punjabi classes and Sangeet and Tabla classes? Is there more to that? Is there more involvement of the whole community in a Gurdwara? I think very few Gurdwaras actually do that, and I'm hoping that as the youngsters come on board now, that this will change, and that we'll get more and more young people being politicized on a Gurdwara level to run the Gurdwaras as they're supposed to be run, as big community centers.
Very important points, Ravinder. There's several points, but let me go back to what Manmeet said earlier, because you see, when you, Manmeet Singh, when you spoke about the Mata who governed and delegated, I don't know who you were talking about, you see, and that is very significant. There are very few female leaders that I know about, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I can, you know, there's about 2 or 3 that I can tell you their names straight away. Others I would have to look up. So why is it that we're supposed to be a faith that believes in equality? And yet, when I think about the granthees that I know, my brother is a president of the Stafford Gurdwara. He's been doing that job for decades, and the granthee's always been a male. You know, so around me, in Birmingham as well, I don't see many female leaders. Why is that, do you think? Anyone?
Can I bring a Gurdwara perspective because of my involvement locally and nationally? So just picking up one of Ravinder Singh's points about election and selections, give me some food for thought. So my personal anecdotal evidence I have, not statistical, but just anecdotal, is most Gurdwaras actually do have a selection process where they, by consensus, select people to do seva in various posts. So that's my anecdotal evidence. What I'm going to take away is perhaps through the Supreme Sikh Council, maybe try and get some sort of survey to understand how many Gurdwara actually have election process and selection processes. And, you know, I'm going to keep an open mind on that. So, you know, I'm going to take that away from today's, because I would look at, you know, what can we learn? So if that comes out with an interesting fact, that'd be great. So the other side you mentioned there about leaderships in Gurdwaras, some of the people I've met, I mean, I've met ladies who've been presidents. You know, let's take the president, the secretary and treasurer as statutory duties rather than positions of power. Because some people do say, oh, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, the kids are married and you never see them again. So let's take those extremes away and just try and look at what would be the ideal situation going forward. And I think things are changing with post-COVID. My personal experience in Derby has been, you know, 23rd of March last year, all our elders who were running the Gurdwara just went home and didn't come back from home. So we can't come to Gurdwara, we can't get out. And suddenly we had, after, you know, March, April, May, Gurdwara was hardly open, you know, because of the circumstances. And when they did reopen, I was so humbled to see youngsters coming together and people that I'd actually not seen come to the Gurdwara for, you know, other than say Baisakhi or Diwali. And they were coming together, and I was put in this fortunate position that, you know, the keys were in my hand. It was Rajit Singh Samhur, you know, whilst you're the youngest in the committee, kind of thing. And I didn't know really what to do, but I looked back and think, well, actually, I didn't need to do anything. Maharaji Das, the youngsters actually stepped up, and they said, look, you know, our elders have put this together. You know, we've only come occasionally because our kids growing up. But actually, you know, there's a time and a place now for us to step up. And I said, well, look, if you can come along, bring your friends along, let's just do it. And I don't know what everybody else's experience is. It's actually has happened. Yeah. I would call them rough diamonds. So they don't understand the political, and politically in the proper sense of the making sure that everyone does feel valued, does feel that they get a fair crack of the whip, does feel that they come in and are listened to. So all that has got to come. That comes with maturity, and as an institution or a bunch of individuals or Sangat matures. But in the Seva Bhavana, they said, Baji, don't you worry. We'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this, we'll do that. Just tell us who to talk to, just in case we don't understand how to do it properly. So I've been very, very humbled to see that youngsters can do it, but you've got to give them the chance. We're going to fall over, don't kick us when we're falling over. When we're falling over, help us to get up. And I think that's a trick we miss. So I think there are a mixture of, I mean, you know, ladies and men who run the organisation, mainly men because of the, you know, the way life is generally. But there are some very strong women. I mean, I had Massi in Bedford. So Kamadi, you're in Luton, you know, Bedford's not very far away. I didn't know she was the Pradhan of the Gurdwara. And, you know, and then when I found out she was, I said, it makes sense, Massi, because your character and your get up and go, yeah, you're a perfect candidate or perfect person for that role. And you know, these people who do the job properly, you know, are the get up and goers and get things done people. And they do show true leadership. No one's a perfect leader. I mean, if we had perfect leaders, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I think there are green shoots of youngsters, definitely. I mean, look at Tarun Singh. He looks like Nrinkor, Amaka Majid, you look like the youngest in the group here. Manmeet, you know, you're in Malaysia. You know, you're probably all doing something at grassroots level that is just adding to that leadership. And leadership can come in many different ways. So, absolutely, yeah, I can vouch for that. I'll take that away and I'll see if we can, at some point in the future, understand how many Gurdwara go through a selection or election process and just get a feel for where it is. What you hear the headline news of, look, these two parties are having a fight out in a Gurdwara election. I think personally that is far and few between. But they make the headlines because they're probably in the big Gurdwara, and it's sometimes about money, sometimes about power, sometimes just about control. Or maybe a narrative that has to be put out there.
Benji, just one project I did on Facebook. It was recognizing Sevadar who had passed away from COVID during the first pandemic, and obviously a lot of the Sevadar who we've known in the local Gurdwaras in Birmingham, Sandwell, and Dudley, and all these areas. A lot of the older people unfortunately perished, and these people had been doing seva, these Gurdwara, for 25 to 30 years, and that is going to create a vacuum now in the Gurdwara systems where younger people can start, getting into the Gurdwara. We've got a big issue at the moment with whether Gurdwara should be used as vaccine centres or used as test units, because they've been closed for so long, and we can't come certain Gurdwaras because they don't have the English capacity. The council is going to them, look, you could serve your community, but they just do not know how to handle that. So I think coming out of the COVID situation, we will be able to have probably more younger people starting to take parts of leadership, and hopefully that will grow into political leadership in the future, because once you can know how to deal with Sangat and the problems and the issues within the community, then you can start expressing that on a different platform. And I think that's where we really have fallen down, because those people that were attached to the Gurdwara with the committees, those seem to get into power, yet they do not know how to represent the whole Sikh community, whether it be female, male, youngsters, middle-aged, elders. So there is all these different strands of our community where we need articulate people to be able to, say that to funders, say that to local councillors, and hold political people to account. Because so far, so much I hear is, oh, car park mil gaya, mil gaya, and that guarantees the votes for that party. And we need to get out of that mindset and say, okay, what's happening with the health issues, health dynamics of our young people? Why are our young people excelling? And I'm fortunate because I work in cricket as well. And how many Sikh young cricketers are there out there? There's only one. Yeah. How many Pakistani community cricketers are there? There's 15, 20. Yeah, you can name them. And that's across cricket, across politics, and it's across key areas within local councils as well. So we are actually disenfranchising ourselves from the decision-making process. Unless that changes, nothing will change for our community.
What would be really wonderful, Ranjit especially, and Surinder Singh and Manmeet in Malaysia, and Narinder Kaur in New Jersey as well. What would be really, really wonderful is if Gurdwaras, if there was a way of showing good practice in Gurdwaras and celebrating that.
Yeah.
That would be a fantastic impetus for the ones who are lagging behind to say, right, if other Gurdwaras can do this, we can do this. So if there's 2 or 3 key activities that a Gurdwara should be doing, And I'm not thinking about the counterpart sahibs and the weddings and the funerals and all that, you know, that just is happening anyway. I'm talking about what is good practice in a Gurdwara. How inclusive is it? What activities are there to engage different members of the community, not just the young, but the elderly? And those, are there many health clinics going on in the Gurdwara? How many counseling sessions? What type of counseling goes on? I mean, there's so many youngsters who are disfranchised. There's so many young girls who are on the anorexic scales and the bulimia scales in our schools. And they don't have to be just Sikhs. Our Gurdwaras providing these services as a community center and show good practice. And if we can highlight that and celebrate those Gurdwaras, I think it'll have a knock-on effect on the others.
Let me answer you in this set. Sorry for that. So here's two parts of the stories again. I'm going to, okay, I'll give one part actually, which makes more sense, is that 10, 12 years ago, or I could say, yeah, maybe about 15 years ago, we were youngsters, and a couple of us came up with an idea of giving langar on a Sunday to the general hospital for Sikhs patients who were admitted there. It started off very well. It went when we started off this initial activity, I would say, yeah, I would say I was in the 20s. They started off with only 6 people in the hospital. We would go to the ICU or to a ward, to the general ward, and provide langar to the Sikh community. But then what happened is the hospital saw that we would bring food, and then some of the patients there would like the food that we bring, because ours is dal, chawal, rotiyan, and sabjiyan. We do that, right? So the hospital requested us to have more. Can you bring in more food? So what happened is that they requested if we can do one ward. So in one ward of a general hospital could take up to 40 people. Or so we were saying, okay, and there was only 4 of us at that time when we started it, and we said, why not? We'll try. And by doing that, we announced it in the Gurdwara that this is what we are doing, and we need your support. We may not need the support of the finance. We need the support of going to the Gurdwara, of going to the hospital and give the food every week. So we need to take shift, because if we are going to give every 4 weeks, if we are going to go, we're going to burn out. So eventually a lot of people started doing, and after a while, the general hospital requested us to do langar for not only the ward, they asked us to do langar for the whole chemotherapy ward that was there. So they had about 146 patients that was there. And we were very happy that what happened is that the youngsters that were behind, the juniors of us, started helping us. So we could take rotation, we took take shift. So who would be on shift A, B, C, D, because we had 4 Sundays or 5 Sundays. So who's going to go in this week? Maybe a group of 7, 8 would go, 7, 8 would go. By the time when we grew up and it started maturing, now we have the system running, and we have at least about, I would say, 5, 6 volunteers every week going to the Gurdwara, to the hospital to give langar. And we prepare the langar in the Gurdwara. We'll do all the rotiyan, we'll do everything. And not that it'll be short. They have not been, if there is extra, we would give to the nurse, to the staff, to the ambulance people, everyone as well. This is the good thing that is happening. And because I would say we had our community called the Sikh Naujawan Sabha Malaysia. So we had that. So all of us came under that group, and we would do all this kind of things. And as you mentioned, preaching, as you mentioned, we used to do a lot of talks. We used to get people, inspirational people who were in the country, who if they were not Sikhs, they could be other religion, but give talks to the youngsters. We did talks with, we had Richard Branson coming into one of our Gurdwara session when he was in Malaysia. We had, of course, we had Tony Fernandez. We had a couple of others who were professional people, and we also had we had a couple of people from the Bush administration who came down at that time. So we have got people to talk and encourage what to do, but we also have told and encouraged people to follow the leadership. So when we were doing this, we came up with the leadership of 8 pillars of leadership, which is supportive, caring, inspirational, honesty, humanity, and in terms of integrity, courage, and responsibility. So what happens there is we also preach them using the 5 Ks that we had. So what happens is we use the 5 Ks of what exactly it means. So we tell people that you have the case is given to you as a gift to show yourself who you are. It's a responsibility and honesty to have that as an honor. Kanga is royalty, because why we did that is that you wash off, you comb off all your thoughts, your bad thoughts with the Kanga, and be ready for new challenges, be ready for new things. So it's loyalty, and it's also it's loyalty. And the Kara, why do we have Kara? Is this to remind you not to do anything wrong. It reminds you to always follow the good path, which is the humility. And then we had the Chera, which is of course there, but we would also tell them it's integrity. What is it controls your anger, controls your passion, controls your greed. So this is why the Chera was given. And then of course they said Kirpan. That is because we inspire and the truth of what we believe in, what the Sikhism religion believe in. So we had put all this in together, and we would put this together for the youth, for them to understand. Yes, we have a lot of politicals. I would say the seniors do handle the political side of it, but I've seen people from I would say my generation and younger to me have started to step up and started to take more responsibilities for, like example, the hospital. During the COVID, there were a couple of areas that was a red zone that we were not able to go in. Some of these youngsters got a lot of ration, a lot of uncooked food to deliver to that area because nobody could go in. The government recognized it, started asking if we were able to provide more. And it became a bit, so a lot of satsangats and all gave in their contribution. They gave in their donations and whatever ration they want to give. So we started delivering. By March or the May of last year, we had delivered to.
I'm going to stop you for a minute, Mamit, because I just want to bring in. Yeah, thank you. That's really inspiring. I just want to bring Theron in because Theron hasn't had a chance to say anything yet. And going back to the point made earlier, several of you have noticed that there are several types of leadership, and a type of leadership that we don't often think about is creativity, and Theron is excellent in creativity. And it's interesting for me that he is the last one to speak today. So Theron, could I bring you in, please, and tell me about your work as a creative person, as an artist, because we have so many examples of Sikhs being involved as good neighbours, as being involved in sharing and contributing, but not as many who are contributing to our culture through their creativity. So Theron, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. Actually, I was kind of interested in listening to everyone else. But I would say in our communities, a lot of obviously probably motivated by financial situations. A lot of young people in our communities are not encouraged into creative industries. So a lot of creative people, people who learn creatively or enjoy creative practices, have not, over the last kind of 25, 30 years, have not been encouraged. Like, these aren't proper jobs or jobs done for our community. But I found that these are quite fulfilling careers, and like, people live and like doing different things. And so I think that's one thing that we're trying to work on. So we set up an organization called ArtSeek, which was meant to kind of do art exhibitions and encourage people to take their artwork and their creative careers more seriously. And we've done really well with that. We've been able to help people and mentor people in their creative businesses, monetize their artwork. But I think during Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time, there was a great patronage of art and culture and architecture and all these different things. But we're finding that that isn't really happening at the moment now. A lot of
examples behind you, don't you? You have some examples behind you.
Yeah, so I found, so I did mine mainly by Kickstarter. So when I wanted to create Sikh statues, I actually did this via the Sangat, really, by bringing it to Sangat and saying, this is what I'm trying to make. I'm trying to bring these stories back to life, the stories of Garja Singh, Bhota Singh, Bibi Harsharan Kaur, all these people. And the way I saw it is, when we're visual thinkers, our young people, they resonate with a lot of these sort of Marvel characters and comic books. So I was trying to kind of say that, well, look, we've got our own heroes and we should be celebrating these, but we need to kind of start using new media, new technology, you know, animation, all these things, and use these to communicate with our young people. I think 15 years ago, when we were kind of youngsters, we looked at the Gurdwaras as more of a hindrance than a help. We thought it's going to take too much effort to change these. So we kind of took a step back and said, let's forget the Gurdwaras and let's see what we can do ourselves. And so we don't give money to the Gurdwara, we give money to interesting projects that people are working on. Somebody's creating a book, or somebody's creating, and I think with the crowdfunding, that's starting to happen now. And I think people like, you know, Khalsa Aid and Sikhi to the Max, they've done it without the help of the Gurdwaras. So I think that part of our leadership is us just going out there and seeing what we can do. We've got our own businesses now, so we fund our own projects. So we're creating a series of statues, you know, of all Sikh historical figures.
Can you just show us a couple of those?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But the thing is, we don't have to go to the Gurdwara. We don't have to rely on like Sikh leadership to kind of do that now. And, you know, we're using our own, we've got our own 3D printers and stuff like that. So we're funding these ourselves and kind of developing our own kind of creative communities. And I think that is the way. And there's plenty of examples of amazing kind of male and female leaders within our community. They're just not necessarily, you know, in the Gurdwara committees, because they've decided that actually this system is not going to be helpful for us because there's too much. We don't want to fight against other people's egos. We just want to get on with the good work that we want to do. But I don't think it's something exclusive to the Sikh community as well. If you look at American Donald Trump, he's the typical Gurdwara Pradhan, isn't he, liking it? The one who pushes himself to the front and kind of, you know, and so I don't see it as something that's exclusive to us. I know a lot of friends in the Pakistani and Jewish community have similar problems with their own people, you know, holding them back or criticizing each other because they don't agree with each other. But I think I found that if we kind of step outside of our own bubble and work in the real world, so many people are doing so interesting things with, you know, video production and doing stuff with the BBC now and, you know, excelling in their own individual fields, but then able to bring that skill back to their community. And I see that's the way I see it happening. I'm really interested in what somebody said about this structure, because the current structure doesn't really work. The Gurdwara structure is not working for us. But if there's this, I think that it's about us just working together and meeting up with each other and helping each other out, you know, and we found that kind of like works really well. And that's really all I can say.
And I think,
I know you've got, your time is limited now. Can I just say one thing that I would like to really urge everybody is to, in your local communities, I actually would love to work with you guys on the screen now, is to actually think of a structure that would be the ideal Gurdwara and the ideal programs within a Gurdwara that we would all want to see. You know, whether it's Manmeet Singh said about youth leadership training and having the ideals of, and actually having mentors in the community who would mentor young Sikhs to become leaders, or whether it's the creative wing, you know, having not just Santhya classes, not just learning to read Gurbani and learning to understand Gurbani, which is really fundamental and it must happen, but also bringing in the creative side of Sikhi as well and encouraging young Sikhs to be creative. So have a structure within the Gurdwara in which you have committee members who are responsible for these wings of engagement, if you like. And I'd love to set up I don't know, a structural prospectus of what an ideal Gurdwara should look like.
I'm sure there will be lots of projects that arise as a result of that. Always happens when people come together and they have an intention to collaborate, and like Dharan Singh's just expressed to us, that they've created a society for creatives that I didn't even know anything about. Yes. And so I'm just so inspired by that. There is.
It's a shame that they're having to do it on a standalone. A lot of Sikhs are doing it on an individual level, but when you come together, like Taran Singh's community, if they had the backing of a Gurdwara, they would have been a lot further. A lot more people might have come along, and it would have been inspiring to see if Taran Singh had turned around and said, "Our local Gurdwara really supported us." That would have really made my day today. But it hasn't, and I don't think the structures are in place for the Gurdwaras to actually empower people like Taran Singh.
Yeah, I'm very much like Taran Singh, that I always find a way around it.
Yeah.
You know, rather than try to dismantle a structure that exists. I share this with you, Taran, that I have always been very creative. I always find a way of, you know, finding my own way. And maybe Kamaljeet and Rajnarind, you might agree with this as well, like being, maybe it's a very feminine kind of way of doing things, that we find ways around the system. What do you think, Kamaljeet?
Yeah, so I was going to jump in earlier actually, and this is because I'm very fortunate that the employer that I work for allows us to really openly share and I guess practice our faith. So I'm a committee member without an ego effectively, well I hope so, for the Sikh network within NatWest Group. And what that is, I think there's about maybe 15, 20 committee members, and it enables us to really, I think, support us as an organisation to be really purpose-led and be a learning organisation, and give us the opportunity to learn from each other from different faith strands or from different agenda points. So for example, it could be Black Lives Matters, or you know, we've talked about the farmers' protests in some respects, and it just enables us to, I guess, gives us that platform to share these kind of things. And we'll have particular individuals that might be responsible for engagement or sponsorship or events and that kind of thing. And I think that really works quite well, and maybe is different to how Gurdwara committees are run perhaps, and maybe there's an opportunity to take some of that offline. But yeah, if I'm not able to, I guess, if I don't have a platform to share something, then there's always a way around it. I think it's just your mindset to take a different route perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Rajnan, do you have anything more to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's truly a mindset. I'm not sure if it's a feminine versus male, female versus male thing. I honestly think it's a mindset. I mean, just today, I've already sent Surinder Singh here in the States. We were fortunate again to do a national survey, the first time ever by the Sikh American Legal Defense Foundation. So I sent him that information. I'm going to share the trailer for the documentary. I want to kind of connect with all of you guys, because that, to me, there's so much, and maybe I'm fortunate being in the States. We've been very blessed. I mean, we have a lot of engagement from the children, from the youth in the Gurdwaras in various aspects. We have it from the elders. We have so many events, and it's not just on the East Coast. I mean, I've lived here my entire life, so traveling to Canada, traveling to the West Coast. Maybe it's larger here. Maybe we're not as concentrated as you are in the various countries that are being represented here. Maybe it's the Sangats, but we've been very fortunate. So I would love to share whatever we have. I'm going to send you guys all the information that I have. I think that one thing I would like to leave you all with is that there is a time right now where, from a creative aspect, we are merging the strength of our older generation right now, who are fighting at the forefront, at the protests, merging with the youth who are really advancing that through social media. So to me, I see a beautiful merging right now. And it's inspiring because so many people are picking it up. I mean, we had the Super Bowl and we had a commercial that was from the Super Bowl. We had the mayor from the California, Jerry Dwyer, kind of publicly announce his support. So to me, there's so much going on, and it's really seeing the positiveness in that and moving it forward. And I think that's the mindset that I would go for.
Excellent.
That is beautiful. That is really interesting. And it's one of those areas where we think the social media aspect of it is growing and growing and growing, but we need the right people to access the social media and portray the positive messages, and that in a collective way of, celebrating our older people, but also putting forward the young generation to take over the mantle, because those getting those messages out, making sure that the Sikh way of life, the ethos and the leadership that we can offer is available to all. I think that's really good. I've worked with Kamaljeet's at the NatWest, and they do a phenomenal job. I've been to some of the events that they come in, and it's a younger crowd. It's people who could make that influence, and they need that opportunity to step up and be the decision makers, but make it in a different way than our parents did. And I say, if you look at the States and the UK, there is that big dynamic difference, whereas probably in the States you've probably got younger immigrants, first year immigrants that have come in and established themselves, whereas we've probably got a bit more the 1960s, and we've established ourselves as a big community already, but the structure that they've had in is hardly ever changed. So Gurdwara has probably done the same thing over and over again for many years, and that's where we've probably not learned from improving things, making things easier, making things better, and not learning from these mistakes that we've made in the past. It's nothing to do with gender, really. I think gender is a situation where, yeah, that is a blockage, but it isn't an unsurmountable blockage, because, if these people are proving themselves, it's giving them the opportunities. I think what it is the right people aren't getting the right opportunities to make these decisions or influence. And that's where the problem is. We either disconnect with the Gurdwara entirely, which isn't good, because we've got our audience already there that we can practice our faith and our knowledge and our thinking. But it's also being able to take that outside of the Gurdwara and say, okay, Sikhs are making this influence. We did the 550 leadership book, and I helped Manjeet call a lot of that. And we've already got potentially 550 supporters of the Sikh faith. But since COVID has kicked in, that would really provide us with a platform of saying, yeah, we do influence different parts of life outside just our faith and outside the Gurdwara. Because I think we don't want to be labeled as, oh, those are the people that give free food to everyone, regardless. And I think that's important, but more important is we look after everybody, healthcare, education. How many boards are sitting on governing boards of schools or colleges or universities do we have? We don't know. Yeah. And that's the key messages of getting the younger people say, oh, by the way, he's doing that, I should be able to do that in my area. I think that's where we need to really connect everything. And that once we do that, we'll be able to get, our community will be able to thrive.
Excellent. Yes. Lots of wonderful ideas, for Taran Singh. I would love to see a university that specializes in creativity, which focuses on Sikh symbology, Sikh art, history, things like that. I don't know if that exists at present. If it does, I'm not aware of it.
I mean, we've got the talent that we've got in our community is amazing. I mean, there's so many amazing artists doing brilliant stuff, like really great stuff in it. And I think we have had a few Gurdwara who have really supported. They've given us space to do exhibitions and stuff, but really the patronage that they need, to really come up, in scale in a big way. And I think that I really like this sort of business mentorship sort of structure, because I think it works really well. I've gone from being like somebody who was really afraid of business to winning like business award, and it's just through like the help of others, people advising, giving me free help from the Sikh community as well. We've got some amazing business leaders in our community who are really willing to help, and kind of they've given you advice and help and teach you how to do things. And so I think that kind of mentality, and I think even bringing that to young people as well, giving them an entrepreneurial mindset as well, that sort of stuff. My daughter's 13, she runs her own little art business, and she's made like £1,000 within a few months. And it's kind of like really kind of exciting to see that with a little bit of help and encouragement, what people, from our community can do. So that sort of like big Baji, big Benji sort of mentoring thing would be really like awesome, like, in it, because I think we could all need a helping hand now and again and some advice from each other.
That's right. And I think this project, at the core of it, it's the spirit of Seva and Bandki Shakna, and Bandki Shakna in terms of skills and our time and our knowledge, as opposed to financial contributions, because we're good at that already. We're good at making financial contributions, but what about making contributions in terms of our skills and our knowledge?
I think our gurus have done a fantastic job in our DNA in giving us the Simran, Seva and Kirt Karni. Those three foundations are in our DNA, and we actually excel in helping others. I think humanity itself is ingrained in every Sikh. So what I always say is, if you've got humanity on your side, religion really doesn't matter. As Sikhs, we're fortunate to be given humanity as the very first thing by Guru Nanak. And there are so many strengths that we have in our DNA, in our thinking, in our mindsets. The only lack that I see is that when we come together, we need to have a little bit more humility and to be able to listen to each other's points of views, and take on board what the other person's saying without getting childish about it and start getting annoyed or angry about the other person's point of view, to have that little bit of more maturity about things. And I think just having those fundamentals, we can get together and actually achieve fantastic things over and beyond what Sikhs have already done so far.
Yeah,
Can I just add to that as well? So there's great diverse opinions and so forth. So in a past life, and kind of bringing my past life into the way I look at Sikhi at the moment, is that what does the Sikhs say in the UK or in America or in Malaysia look like? What does Sikhi look like in, say, 25 years' time? We did this sort of very, very, very high level exercise not too recently, and came to the conclusion that despite all the good things we do in our businesses, in collective organizations, it's actually the Gurdwara which we've got to safeguard for the next 25 years. Now, the format in which they're safeguarded, how we do it, how we run them, is going to evolve and change. That's for us to influence. So whilst that isn't great, you found a way around it, you've got some help from some Gurdwara, everything we do, if we can bring it into a Gurdwara, a set of Gurdwara, whatever the format might be, because those institutions, and there comes a point where you don't need bigger Gurdwara. There comes a point soon, we just got to stop building. Yeah, there's a bit of caretaking to do to look after the premises you've got, but you don't need, huge Gurdwara. That spirit of Sikhi in terms of seva and a collective in the Sangat, and when the Sangat comes together, it can do loads of things. It can do it, it can move heaven and earth. What I'm saying, the number of it is 25 years time from now, i.e. the next generation, when the likes of Tarun and Rinder and Gamaljeet are then having this conversation, saying, what's the next generation looking to do? Those Gurdwara we've got to make sure are still there as institutions, because that's our legacy. It's not going to be Ranjit Singh Sira Limited. That companies will come and go, I will come and go, my family will come and go. But those institutions we have got, which we inherit now, and the things that we put in it, the principles on which they stand, those are the things we should be building in now. And the narrative should be about the Sangat now, evolving those Gurdwaras into institutions which have longevity. So the good things we want to see happening in 25 years' time, start doing it now. Because, an oak tree doesn't grow overnight. It takes a while. So let's start, if I talked earlier about the green shoots of a revival almost, we need to get rid of this baggage that, if every time we stand up, we're going to get knocked down. And Tarun Singh, when I give various speeches on entrepreneurship, I say, well, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. As long as you stand up once more, the number of times you get knocked down, you will keep going. And these are the kind of things, these are the kind of mindset, Narinder, you mentioned about mindset. It's the mindset. We're going away from, oh, hai mainu ho gaya, to, I can do this. And when I get knocked back, I will get up and I'll carry on. And that's the mindset we need to imbue in our kids, or anyone, in fact, any age, it doesn't really matter. It took me a while to realize this. When I fell down, I thought, oh, no, some wise people said, no, you've got to get up and keep going. And that is a narrative. Quite often, I mean, Narinder Singh, you mentioned the Gurdwaras, when you went in, you felt that you were fighting a battle. And I've spoken to some people who have been through that battle and said, well, why did you keep going? Because they came into the committee, got disillusioned very quickly. And but they said, well, so why did you keep fighting? Because now you're the leaders of the organizations. Thank you. Just got a cup of tea for my son. Looked after here. They said, well, look, every time we were told off by the Pradhan or the secretary, every time the elders told us off, we learnt the lesson in that. It was painful, but we looked away the lesson in that. Yeah. And when you flip that around the other way, and I said, why did you tell Tarun off for that, what he did there? Why? He goes, don't worry. My job is to tell him off so that he learns from it. So there is a subtle narrative going in the background when you feel disillusioned in any organization. I mean, come on, you're working in NatWest. the 15 people setup you've got as a committee with Manjeet and and so on, is you've created something there now which will have longevity. Because in 5 years' time you might be doing another job, you might be in a different country, your circumstances might be different, but that institution you've created, and that's what I'm getting to, is create these institutions. If we can make our Gurdwara institution stronger, and then guess what, in 25 years' time we will, well, for now we'll start worrying less about them, and they have to evolve. Yeah, we can't go in and change them overnight.
Ranjit, that's exactly what I was coming to.
Yeah.
Thank you for
that. There's a narrative here, and we've got to evolve our organizations. Remember, Gurdwara weren't called Gurdwaras; they're called Gurukars now. It's not a Gurukar. It was a Dharamsala. It started out as. It's a Sangat. It's a bunch of people like this coming together with different views, just like the fingers on your hand are very different. If we were all thumbs, guess what? We'd never get anything done. The fact that there's 3, 6, 7, 8 of us here and we're 8 probably different opinions means that narrative, and I think Ravinder Singh said it earlier, the ability to agree to disagree is our strongest strength that we can learn. We haven't learned that. We are not mature enough as a Panth, as a collective, to appreciate it's my way or the highway. Yeah. As soon as we can learn to work together and hear each other, then guess what? The spark of something new will come from not one person's opinions, but the evolution of a number of opinions.
Absolutely.
I'll leave it at there. Yeah. So evolution.
I think that's a great point to close this on, because this conversation could carry on forever, because everyone's got so much wisdom to share. But let's leave that for the next conversation. This is only the beginning of the project, and I envisage at least 5 years of this project. And let's see where we get to. Let's, in 5 years in the future, let's look back on this and think, look how far we've traveled. So thank you very much, everybody. I will I'll speak with you all and let you know the next time that we'll have the opportunity to meet like this and carry on the conversation.
Dr. Tasveer Kaur, just 1 second. I just want to leave one quote. I was teaching, I teach public speaking and interviewing, and one of the quotes I just gave someone, or one of the questions, and it was apt because I was actively listening to Ranjit Vichi here. Would you rather always lose or never play? And that to me says it all, right? I mean, there's no right one answer, but Vijay, you said it so appropriately, and I think that that's something we should walk away from. And I just couldn't hold myself back, Benji. Sorry.
I'll put it in stronger words to you. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. Shakespeare. I'm not that clever. I've picked up snippets along the way.
A very famous saying. Yeah.
To thought, it's best to die with a clear conscience than never to have taken on the battle of righteousness. Yeah. So we can apply all these to our daily lives, but it's when the magic happens for me when your daily life becomes an influence on other people. Yeah. So you're talking on stage, public speaking training, your words are carrying so far, and you don't know whose ears or whose life you're going to change. So the more we can say in a charitable and a positive way, we will change lives. You change lives every day.
I'd like to add to that in the sense that
my last ending is Baisakhi at the moment, so happy Baisakhi to everyone.
Happy Baisakhi to everybody. Jasveer, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for bringing us all together. I've got to go now, so I'll say Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Manmeet, you had something to say.
No, I just wanted to say that whatever I think this has been my mom, my grandmother, my mom, and has always been telling me. So this is a few quotes they have always told me and reminded me all the time. When wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When health is lost, something is lost. When character is lost, everything is lost. And my grandmother used to say that if you have no character in Sikhism, you don't belong. You don't have a principle.
That's true. Yep. Okay. Anybody else got any last minute things to share?
I could talk here all day and all evening.
Yes, absolutely.
We should have an open forum sometime.
Yes.
Ahead of your next formal get together. Thank you, Dr. Jasveer, for bringing us together. And it's been a pleasure seeing you and sharing some time with you guys.
Okay. I look forward to the next discussion. Thank you.
Waheguru
Ji Ki Fateh. Waheguru
Waheguru, Waheguru.